My sister sabotaged my dream job, destroyed my reputation, and tried to ruin my wedding with my fiancé on her side. So I took back everything. My name is Harry, and I'm 31 years old. I got engaged to my fiancée Lily 6 months ago. We'd been together for 5 years, and I thought we'd begun the best chapter of our lives. The wedding was scheduled for next month. But recent events have shown me how wrong I was about everything. You'll need some context to understand how we got here. My younger sister Jazzy is 28 years old. I haven't spoken to her in over 9 years, and there are valid reasons for this. Jazzy and I didn't get along growing up. Our parents tried to force us into an ideal sibling relationship, but all we did was fight. Jazzy was fiercely competitive, constantly striving to outperform me in every way. I can still remember the event that set the tone for everything. I was 10, and Jazzy was 7. I had recently won a spelling bee at school, and our parents had taken us out for ice cream to celebrate. Jazzy, instead of being happy for me, had a complete tantrum right there at the ice cream shop. She cried that it wasn't fair, and that she spells better than I do. She requested that our parents question her right then and there, making the entire scenario terribly awkward and embarrassing. That was only the beginning. Her behavior became more sinister as we got older. If I got an A on an exam, she would study incessantly until she got an A as well. When I was 12, I won a local art competition, and my parents took us out to supper to celebrate. Instead of being pleased for me, Jazzy had a fit in the restaurant, yelling that she could draw better. She insisted on showing everyone her sketches right then and there, turning what should have been a happy occasion into a scene. That's only one example. This behavior shaped our childhood. If I joined the basketball team, she became completely obsessed with basketball. When I expressed interest in a lady in high school, Jazzy would go out of her way to be her best friend or gently flirt with her. It was frustrating. My home, which was supposed to be a haven, felt more like a perpetual competition. Our parents made every effort to help us find common ground. They even enrolled Jazzy in family therapy when she was 13 and I was 16, but she refused to participate. She'd sit there with her arms crossed, rarely saying anything, as the therapist attempted desperately to coax her out. The therapist eventually told my parents that they couldn't do much else, until Jazzy agreed to cooperate. Things reached a breaking point when we were both in our early 20s. I had recently graduated from college and landed my dream job at a top marketing business. It was the type of position for which I had worked so hard. Great income, excellent benefits, and the opportunity to work on campaigns that could change the industry. I felt as if my years of hard work had finally paid off. Meanwhile, Jazzy was still in college and struggling to find her feet. She had changed majors at least 4 times and was on the verge of academic probation, struggling to meet deadlines and follow directions. When I announced my job offer at a family meal, I expected at least a polite congratulations. Instead, Jazzy erupted. Her face contorted with wrath, and she began ranting at me, accusing me of being a show-off who constantly stole the spotlight. "Why do you always have to be the golden child?" she asked. "Why can't you just fail once so that someone else has a chance?" The words stung, but what truly shocked me was the expression in her eyes, a toxic mix of rage, envy, and bitterness. My parents attempted to intervene, assuring her that she had plenty of time to figure things out, and that my accomplishment did not lessen her own abilities. But Jazzy wouldn't have it. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door so violently that a picture tumbled from the wall. Later that night, I overheard her talking on the phone with one of her friends. She was saying stuff like, "He's not going to keep rubbing this in my face, and I'll make sure he gets knocked down a peg or two." I dismissed it as her normal dramatic venting. After all, we'd had our fair share of sibling squabbles over the years, and I assumed this was just another of her tantrums. But I could not have been more mistaken. A few days before starting my new job, I received an email from the firm's HR department. They had done an unexpected check of my background due to certain alarming materials that had come to their knowledge. Apparently, someone sent them faked emails and screenshots from false social media profiles, all in my name. These documents used harsh and discriminatory language portraying me as absolutely unsuited for the post. HR informed me that they were rescinding my offer, which left me astonished and devastated. The job I had worked so hard to get was gone in an instant. It did not take me long to fit the pieces together. Jazzy was the only person who understood enough about me to create such intimate and hurtful things. When I approached her, she initially seemed to be innocent, dismissing my claims with a cold smile. But as I pressed more, her facade crumbled. "Maybe you deserve to know what it feels like for once," she eventually whispered, her voice quivering with rage. You've always been the favorite, the one everyone admires. It's about time you got a taste of failure. Her comments rendered me dumbfounded. My own sister had intentionally wrecked my future out of jealousy and hate. It wasn't simply a betrayal, it was a declaration of war. But she eventually broke down and admitted everything. She'd created the bogus accounts, fabricated the emails, and ruined my reputation, all because she wanted me to fail at something. Her voice was full of twisted pride, as if she had finally won some bizarre competition. I was crushed. This was beyond sibling rivalry. This was a premeditated sabotage by my own flesh and blood. I told her I never wanted to see or communicate with her again, and I walked out of the house that day. I crashed on a friend's couch while I tried to piece together my life. In the years that followed, I lost contact with Jazzy. My parents still saw her occasionally, but they knew better than to raise her around me. It was difficult for me to rebuild my career. I had to start with a lower-paying job and work my way back up, but I eventually got there. Now I have a wonderful job, helpful friends, and, until recently, Lily. When I met Lily 5 years ago, it felt like everything had finally clicked into place. She was nice, witty, and understanding. On our 4th date, I told her all about Jazzy. She listened and sympathized, acknowledging that family connections may be hard, and respecting my decision to cut links. I made one thing clear. Jazzy was not going to be a part of my life, especially at my wedding. At first, Lily appeared to comprehend. However, as we moved more into the wedding planning process, things began to shift. She continued bringing up Jazzy, implying that it might be time to forgive and forget. Each time I shut her down. The prospect of seeing Jazzy again made my stomach turn. This was meant to be the happiest day of my life, but having Jazzy there turned it into a nightmare. Lily would change the subject for a bit, but I could see she was unhappy. It all came to a climax last week as we finalized the guest list. Lily mentioned Jazzy again, and this time she refused to back down. I recall the precise moment when things began to disintegrate. We were seated in the living room, with the guest list spread out on the coffee table between us. I was already fatigued from a long day at work, and the last thing I wanted to do was revisit the same dispute we'd been having for weeks. But Lily was certain. Harry, I really think you should reconsider inviting Jazzy, she added softly, as if to ease me into it. She's your sister. Don't you think it's time to forgive and move on? I clenched my jaw. She'd said those words before, but they hit me more this time. Perhaps it was the way she looked at me, with eyes full of hope and worry. Perhaps it was the fatigue I felt from repeatedly shutting her down. Regardless, the remarks landed differently that night. Lily, we've talked about this. It's not happening. Having her there will ruin everything. You know what she did to me? Lily sighed, her frustration scarcely concealed. But it was years ago. People change. Maybe she's different now. Maybe she regrets it. I could feel the typical wrath rising. Regrets it. She destroyed my childhood, my career, my reputation. She knew exactly what she was doing. How do you just regret something like that? Her eyes scanned mine for any sign of compromise. I'm not saying what she did was okay. I just think maybe she deserves a chance to make it right. I looked at her in bewilderment. Why are you pushing this? Why does she deserve a chance to be at our wedding? Lily's face hardened. Because family is important, Harry. I can't imagine cutting someone off forever. The remarks stung worse than they should have. Family? You think this is about some petty grudge? She didn't steal my toys or read my diary. She sabotaged my entire life. I had to rebuild everything from scratch because of her. She shook her head, her tone becoming sharper. You're being stubborn. You're punishing her for a mistake she made when she was young. That did it. I snapped. A mistake? Do you know how humiliating it was to lose that job? To have my name dragged through the mud because my sister couldn't stand that I was doing well? That's not a mistake, Lily. That's cruelty. She crossed her arms and turned away. Maybe she's grown. Maybe she wants to apologize. And maybe I don't care, I responded. She made her choices, and I made mine. I told you this was a boundary for me. If you can't respect that, then maybe we shouldn't be getting married. Lily's eyes widened with shock. I could see the hurt on her face, like a shadow. You're seriously saying that over this? She blurted out. I responded, yes. Because it's not just this. It's about trust. You're supposed to be on my side, Lily. You knew how much this meant to me, and you're still trying to push me. We sat in silence, the weight of my words lingering in the air. My heart was beating, each pulse a stinging reminder of how far we'd strayed from the happy pair we were just months earlier. Lily spoke softly. I thought you'd understand. I thought love meant forgiveness. I shook my head, making my words barely audible. Love also means respect. And I can't respect someone who won't respect my boundaries. She said nothing after that. She simply sat there, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. After what seemed like a lifetime, she stood up and left the room. I sat alone, staring at the guest list, the names blending together as my vision blurred. The following day, things were tight. Lily rarely spoke to me, and when she did, it was in few, polite sentences. I could not stand it. This chilly, detached version of her was worse than a yelling fight. It felt like a wall had been built between us, and neither of us knew how to break it down. I kept telling myself it will all be over. We adored each other. We had gone through so much together. Surely this was only a rough patch. But deep inside, I sensed something had changed. Trust has been broken, and once that happens, it is difficult to put the parts back together. A week later, everything detonated. I arrived home late from work, fatigued and depleted. I came in the door and saw Lily sitting at the dining table. Her face was pale, her hands trembled, and the tension in the air was oppressive. Something is wrong. What's going on? I inquired hesitantly. She drew a hesitant breath and glanced up at me, remorse on her face. Harry, I need to tell you something, she continued, her voice shaking. My gut constricted as a terrible sensation swept through me. What is this about? I inquired, attempting to maintain my voice steady. I reached out to Jazzy, she murmured slowly, almost whispering. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard her correctly. You what? The words rang out louder than I intended. I found her on social media a few months ago, she explained, tears welling up in her eyes. I've been talking to her. I just wanted to understand what happened between you two and I invited her to the wedding. It felt like the ground had gone beneath my feet. I could not breathe. My skull vibrated with a low, deafening scream. You invited her? My voice trembled in amazement. I'm so sorry, she wailed. I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought if she came, maybe you two could finally. No. I interrupted her, my voice loud and quivering with rage. You went behind my back. You did exactly what I told you not to do. You betrayed me. Harry, please, she begged, her tears flowing freely now. I love you. I was just trying to help. Help? I asked, my laugh lifeless and frigid. You think this is helping? You knew how I felt and you did it anyway. This isn't love, Lily. This is manipulation. She grabbed for me, but I backed away, my heart splitting into jagged, terrible bits. Harry, wait, she exclaimed, her voice cracking. There's more. I thought she changed. I really did. But when I spoke to her, I realized I was wrong. She hesitated, as if the words themselves were painful to repeat. She hesitated, attempting to calm herself. She said, "Oh, you're his new girl. How can you even be with such a loser?" My chest squeezed as I clenched my fists. Of course Jazzy had not changed. Of course she'd lash out, even if someone tried to be friendly. Lily continued, tears running down her cheeks. That's when I realized you were right all along. I was so wrong to reach out. Harry, I thought I was helping, but I only made things worse. I see now how much she hurt you. I'm so sorry. Her words weighed heavily in the air, yet they did nothing to alleviate my feelings of anguish and betrayal. You should have trusted me, I stated softly but firmly. You should have listened when I told you what I needed. Lily wailed, her face in her hands, and I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. My heart was torn apart, and all I could think of was how the one person I'd trusted the most had gone behind my back, believing she understood better than I did. If you can't respect me enough to trust my judgment, then we have nothing left, I told you. She cried. Don't say that. We can fix this. I shook my head. The pain was too much to bear. No, Lily. You broke my trust, and without trust, there's nothing left to fix. I turned to walk away, each step heavier than the last. The air between us felt final, like a door slamming shut on the life we had created together. I knew it was over, and it hurt more than I could ever express. The silence in our flat felt oppressive following the fight. I spent the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling and repeating every word we had said. My head felt like a cyclone from which I couldn't escape. Sleep did not come, only an unending cycle of rage, betrayal, and heartache. In the cold light of morning, the weight of everything landed on my chest. I could hear Lily moving around and the muted sound of her packing. I didn't have to inquire what she was doing. I sensed the life we'd constructed over 5 years was crumbling. Again, Jazzy prevented us from stopping it. When she eventually went out of the room, luggage in hand, our gazes connected. Her face was smeared with tears, yet her look was one of quiet resolution. "Are you sure this is what you want, Harry?" she inquired, barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. "No, Lily. This isn't what I want. But it's what you've left me with." She nodded and wiped her eyes with the back of her palm. "I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I replied, my voice cracking. "But that doesn't change what you did." We remained there for a minute, the air between us heavy with unspoken words. Then she turned to walk out the door. The sound of it closing behind her was a finality I was unprepared for. I sunk into the couch, the emptiness of the flat pressing against me. It felt like the walls were closing in, and the quiet was deafening in its finality. The following few days were a blur. I formally canceled the wedding, including the location, caterers, and florist. Each call seemed like another stab in the heart, as if I were disassembling a dream piece by piece. The reactions were mixed. My pals attempted to be supportive, but some of them clearly did not understand. Lily's family, on the other hand, made no attempt to conceal their outrage. Her mother called me a callous monster, accusing me of sabotaging a wonderful relationship over little sibling rivalry. Her brother, whom I used to be close to, sent me a long, furious text telling me I was making the worst mistake of my life. I looked at the screen, feeling numb. They didn't know the entire story. They didn't realize how far the pain went. In the midst of all this, my family decided to weigh in. My parents contacted me repeatedly, leaving voicemails ranging from pleading to guilt-tripping. My mother's voice was unsteady and sad. "Harry, please. This could be an opportunity to mend the family. Don't let this break everything apart." But I didn't tear anything apart. It was Jazzy, and now Lily. The people who were supposed to safeguard and support me had crossed borders that I could not forgive. One evening, after a long day at work, I arrived home to an email from Jazzy. I almost erased it before reading it, but my curiosity won out. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." The email was lengthy, full of apologies and explanations. She described how she spent years in therapy attempting to understand her jealousy and bitterness. She recognized that what she did to me was wrong, but she claimed to be a different person now. She wanted to reconcile, make amends, and be my sister again. I stared at the words on the computer, feeling just tiredness. Was I expected to trust that a few years of therapy would relieve the agony she had caused? Could money undo the pain of losing my ideal job, the embarrassment, and the years of effort to rebuild my career? The scars were too deep. I closed the email without responding. I spent the following weekend alone, attempting to comprehend everything. My thoughts kept going back to Lily. I missed her. The way she laughed at my stupid jokes. The way her eyes gleamed when she spoke about her interests. But I couldn't shake the sensation that the trust we had built was gone. It wasn't only about Jazzy, it was about Lily choosing to ignore something I had started from the beginning and do the exact opposite to show a point. I went to play basketball, hoping to sweat off my frustration. I lifted till my legs burned, concentrating on the physical agony rather than the emotional one. After that, I sat in my car, soaked in sweat, staring out the window. Was I being overly stubborn? Was it worth losing Lily for this? But every time I considered reaching out, I remembered the pain in my chest when she revealed she'd gone behind my back, the sense of betrayal, and the harsh awareness that the person I loved had not respected my boundaries. Regardless of how much I loved her, the wound was too fresh and too deep. On Tuesday morning I arrived at work feeling like a ghost. My manager, Ashley, a no-nonsense woman, drew me aside. She had always been supportive and today was no exception. "Are you doing okay?" she inquired, her tone quieter than usual. I forced a smile. I'm getting there. She nodded and studied me for a bit. Sometimes standing your ground is the hardest thing to do, but it's worth it. Her comments stayed with me. I spent the rest of the day submerged in code, allowing the rhythm of work to distract me from the confusion in my thoughts. By the time I arrived home, the flat felt more empty than ever. But for the first time in days, I felt a small sense of calm. I had made the correct option. It didn't make the anguish any less genuine, but at least I hadn't cheated myself. That night I deleted Jazzy's email. I did not need to read it again. I knew the answer. Life went on in the days that followed, but I felt as if I was stuck in time. The apartment, once filled with warmth and laughter, suddenly felt chilly and empty. Lily's absence was an ongoing ache. Her closet side was vacant, while the bathroom shelves were half empty. I kept expecting to see her, hearing her voice in the quiet times, only to be reminded that she had left. I immersed myself in work, utilizing the long hours and difficult assignments as a distraction. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the weight of it all lingered. The betrayal, the broken trust, the future that had slipped through my fingers. Everything followed me like a shadow. Then my folks called me. My phone buzzed late one evening, and I briefly contemplated ignoring it. But something prompted me to pick up. "Hi, Mom," I said with a bland voice. "Harry," she murmured, her voice wary. "Please attend supper this weekend. We need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, exhausted. "Please," she urged. "It's important." Despite my better judgment, I agreed. Perhaps a part of me still hoped they'd understand, to finally comprehend my point of view. But deep down, I knew I was preparing myself for disappointment. Saturday evening arrived and I drove to my folks' house with my stomach in knots. My memories of my boyhood home were different now, tainted with a sadness I couldn't ignore. As I climbed up the steps, I took a deep breath to brace myself. My mom answered the door and greeted me with a strained smile. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered gently, drawing me into a hug that felt more like a plea than a comfort. I stepped inside and immediately realized something was wrong. The air seemed heavy, as if a storm was about to break. And then I noticed Jazzy sitting at the dining table. Her eyes met mine, wide and filled with what appeared to be regret. An icy feeling of rage swept through me. "What is she doing here?" I questioned, my voice trembling. "Harry, please," my father pleaded, his face painted. "We just want to help you make peace." "What is wrong with everyone?" I asked, the treachery hitting me like a blow in the stomach. "You did this behind my back," I continued, feeling the weight of the moment descend on me. "You ambushed me." My mother's eyes flooded with tears. "We thought if you two just talked, you could finally heal." I shook my head and clenched my fists. "You don't get it. You never have." "Harry, wait," Jazzy said, her voice shaking. "I just want to apologize." Her comment struck me like empty noise. I turned to face my parents, bitterness rising in my throat. "You're still trying to fix something that's broken beyond repair. You can't force this." My father's voice cracked. "We just want our family back." "This is your family now," I added, my voice firm. "Where trust doesn't matter, where betrayal is swept under the rug." I moved toward the door, the weight of finality bearing down on my shoulders. "I told you where I stood. If you can't respect that, then I don't know what else to say." I walked away, my heart thumping in my ears. My mother's sobbing followed me down the steps, but I did not look back. The chilly night air hit my face, and I felt clearer than I had in a long time. The lines were drawn. I did not cross theirs, and I would not allow them to cross mine. That night, I sat in my car for a long time before heading home. My phone was buzzing with texts from my parents, Jazzy and Lily. They probably told her about it. I disregarded them all. I was not prepared to answer, explain myself again, or justify my pain. I'd had enough. When I eventually returned home, the emptiness of the flat no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it felt like I had enough space to breathe. I was tired of clinging onto hurtful relationships and attempting to fit parts together that no longer fit. I spent the following few days in peaceful reflection. I was aware that I had burned bridges that could not be rebuilt, yet there was also a peculiar sensation of liberation. I was no longer carrying the weight of others' expectations. I didn't have to forgive someone who hadn't earned it. One evening I decided to get together with several pals. They had been worrying about me, so I decided it was time to come out of the shadows. We went to a modest downtown bar with low music and open chat. As I sipped my drink and listened to their laughter, I realized how alone I had become. My engagement did not mean that the world had ended. Life continued to move, and so could I. Later that night, as we were leaving, my friend Sam tapped my shoulder. "You did the right thing, man," he replied. "It takes guts to stand up for yourself." I nodded, a faint smile appearing. For the first time I believed it. Standing my stand had cost me, but losing myself would have cost far more. The next morning, I went for a walk on the beach. The waves lapped gently on the coast, and the early sun reflected off the sea in brilliant golden hues. I took a big breath, allowing the salty sea air to enter my lungs. There was certainly grief and loss, but there was also hope. I was finally free to create a life in which my boundaries were respected, and I did not have to sacrifice my tranquility for someone else's definition of family. I had no idea what the future contained, but for the first time in a long time, I was content with that. One step at a time, I'd figure it out. The days became weeks, and life fell into a new routine. I wasn't the same person I was before the breakup, but I was starting to feel more stable. There was a weird peace in the silence, focusing solely on myself. It felt as if I was gradually constructing the foundations of my life. Not for anyone else, but for myself. I spent more time with friends who accepted me as I was. We hiked hidden routes around the coastal cliffs, sat around bonfires on chilly evenings, and told stories that reminded me of what true connection was like. These friendships were genuine, unfettered by expectations or betrayals. They gave me the strength to continue forward. At work, things were consistent. I poured myself into tasks, accepting challenges that pushed me to improve. My manager, Denise, observed a change in me. One day she approached me after a meeting. "You've been doing great, Harry," she said with a smile. "I can tell how focused you are. Keep it up." I nodded, feeling a sense of pride. Her remarks reassured me that despite everything, I was still capable and determined. My past had not broken me. It had shaped me into something greater. One weekend, I decided to declutter the apartment. It was time to let go of the things that kept me stuck in the past. As I searched through the drawers and closets, I discovered mementos from my relationship with Lily. A stray earring, an old movie ticket stub, and a half-written grocery list in her handwriting. Each thing was a memory, a glimpse of what we had. But rather than drowning in nostalgia, I let them all go. I put them inside a box, sealed it, and set it aside. Letting go did not mean forgetting. It meant deciding to move forward without the burden of what may have been. The apartment felt different, cleaner and lighter. It was finally my space. I moved the furniture, added some plants, and hung new artwork. These modest modifications have a significant impact. The space felt like a mirror of who I was today, rather than who I was before. My phone buzzed one evening as I was cooking dinner, a new interest that I was gradually improving at. My mom sent me a text. "We miss you. Please contact us when you're ready." I looked at the message for a long time. The hurt from the dinner ambush persisted, but I knew my parents weren't awful people. They simply didn't grasp the extent of my anguish, or the boundaries I needed to protect myself. I did not respond right away. I needed more time, and that was fine. Healing did not need to be hastened. A few weeks later, at a rooftop party in downtown, I met someone new. Her name was Emily. She had an easy smile and a manner of making conversation seem smooth. We discussed everything, from our favorite books to road vacations to the best barbecue locations in Texas. She didn't probe into my background or ask questions that I wasn't prepared to answer. She was just enjoying the time with me. That was refreshing. I did not have to justify myself or defend my bounds. I could just be. Emily smiled at me as the sky turned orange and purple with the sunset. "Feel like getting a milkshake?" she asked. I chuckled. "Sure, as long as I don't have to sing karaoke." She chuckled, and I felt a warmth I hadn't had in a long time. It was hardly the exhilaration of falling in love. It was a calm consolation to know that new beginnings were possible. That night, when I walked back into my apartment, I discovered something. I wasn't over what had happened. Jazzy's deception and Lily's broken trust left lasting scars. But the scars did not define me. They were only half of my story. I felt stronger now, more aware of what I needed and deserved. I stood near the window looking out at the Austin skyline. The globe was still moving and so was I. The way ahead was uncertain, But I was not afraid. I had limits, self-esteem, and a solid understanding of who I was. Standing firm can sometimes lead to the loss of loved ones. But, in the end, it is also about discovering yourself.